All right, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. This is a really powerful and totally free tool that's designed to help pretty much any organization figure out its digital defenses. So let's just start with a big question, right? You've got this constant storm of digital threats, everything from malware and phishing to just, simple human error. Where do you even begin to get a handle on all that risk? Honestly, it can feel completely impossible. And look, if you feel that way, you are not alone. It doesn't matter if you're a tiny startup or a giant global company. That tangled web of threats, vulnerabilities, and defenses, it is a massive, complex challenge for everybody. But what if there was a way to cut through all that complexity? A kind of blueprint that gives everyone a common language to talk about this stuff, from the tech experts on the front lines to the decision makers in the C-suite. Well, that's exactly what this is. This is a guide for everyone. We're talking about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or as folks call it, CSF 2.0. So what is it really? Well, it's voluntary guidance from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And the most important words there are voluntary and any organization. This is not some rigid one-size-fits-all rulebook. Think of it more like a flexible toolkit that's designed to be useful whether you're just getting started or you're already a huge corporation. A really great way to think about it is like a fitness plan for your company's digital health. It's not going to tell you exactly how many push-ups to do, but it lays out the really crucial areas you need to focus on. Your strength, your cardio, your flexibility, so you can be healthy and, more importantly, resilient. Okay, so how is this fitness plan actually put together? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the framework core. These are the 6 key functions that make the whole thing tick. So the entire framework, and I mean everything, is built around these 6 key functions. You can see them here in this continuous cycle. And notice how govern is sitting right there in the middle? That's not an accident. That's the strategic engine that drives every other activity. Let's just walk through it real quick. It makes a ton of sense. It all starts with govern. That's where you set your strategy. Then you identify what you have and what your risks are. Once you know what you're trying to protect, you put protective safeguards in place. But hey, nothing's perfect, right? So you have to be able to detect when something goes wrong. And when it does, you respond with a plan. And finally, you recover your systems and, this is key, you learn from what happened. It's a loop, always getting better. Okay, so we've got the core functions. That's the what. But how do you actually use this? How does it go from being a concept on a slide to a real tool you can use? Well, that's where profiles and tiers come into play. The main tool you'll use is something called an organizational profile. Just think of it as a structured self-assessment. It's you using the framework to map out your company's specific cybersecurity reality, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you actually make 2 of them. First, your current profile. That's a really honest snapshot of where you are right this second. Then you create a target profile. That's where you want to be. And the space between those 2, that gap, that becomes your action plan. It's your roadmap, plain and simple. And to measure how you're doing, the framework uses these things called tiers. They basically describe how mature your cybersecurity game is. For example, at Tier 1, you might be just reacting to problems as they pop up. But a Tier 4 organization, they're called adaptive. They're actively looking for threats and learning from what's happening across their whole industry to constantly get better. And this brings us to a really, really crucial point. If you only look at this framework as a technical checklist for your IT department, you are missing its greatest strength, its absolute superpower. Its real power, the game changer, is that it creates a common language. It builds a bridge. The technical folks can use it to report what's happening, and managers can then take that info and translate it into business risk for the executives. It literally connects the server room to the boardroom. So when you boil it all down, why does this matter? Because it turns cybersecurity from some one-off IT project into a living, breathing cycle of improvement. It forces you to connect security to your actual business goals, making it a core part of your overall strategy. It helps build a culture that's ready for anything. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The document itself says the goal is to describe desired outcomes that are intended to be understood by a broad audience. That's the whole point. It's not about getting lost in the technical weeds. It's about everyone agreeing on where you're going. Which really brings us to the final thought. The digital world never, ever stands still. The threats are always evolving. So the real question this framework asks you is this: how prepared is your organization not just to defend itself, but to adapt?